We're going to move over to post game now as the Knicks lose this one, 115-93. Dexter Henry, Brian Fonseca, Joe Delara here with us post game. Knicks blown out in this one. It wasn't really close from the start, 115-93. Celtics, they had 5 players in double figures, led by your boy, Brian, Peyton Pritchard, with 23 points. Jason Tatum, 22. Jason Tatum shot 8 of 20 in this game. So they were making it work, but 5 and 9 from downtown. I was saying that how all the threes that he had felt really big in this one. The Knicks, they were led by Karl Anthony Towns. They were led by Jalen Brunson. He had 27 points and 9 and 21 shooting. Cat had 21.
Brunson had 27
with
and a half
15
over
rebounds.
Oh.
Yeah,
so that's people who took that over. Yikes.
That's tough. Brunson also 7 assists. Knicks not getting much help elsewhere. Mikal Bridges, 12 points. Most of those came in the third and fourth quarter. Then you also had Josh Hart, who 10. So I didn't hit on any of my props today at all. Josh Hart couldn't get me another bucket.
Got all mine except Derek White.
Deuce McBride, Kemi. So not much winning there when it comes to the Knicks. We are going to bring in our guy who's one of the fantastic reporters for us with the New York Post. He covers mainly another team that wears blue and orange. That is the New York Islanders, but he has been on our basketball coverage throughout the season. I've talked to him a couple of times this year in the Knicks locker room at some Knicks games. It's my guy, Ethan Sears, here for the New York Post. Ethan, what's going on, man?
Hey, Dexter. I'm doing good. How about you guys?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Better than Knicks fans today, or the Knicks fans that paid about $900 for the tickets to see them get blown out. Ethan, you watched this game, and there was so much talk about the three-point variance with the Celtics and what they did in the first 2 games, shooting 25%. They shoot 50% from downtown today. Was that just it? Was it just simple as the math for the Knicks? It didn't work here. The Celtics made shots, and they did not.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. Just a stat that kind of stuck out to me, and this is from the first 2 games. So when the Celtics weren't shooting well from 3, per NBA.com, 24 3-point attempts per game from the Celtics over the first 2 games were wide open. So that's the NBA defines that as a defender 6 feet or more away. They shot pretty terribly on those looks in the first 2 games. But I think probably you don't need to be very smart about basketball to know that wasn't going to last. Today I think we kind of saw that. I don't know what the numbers were from today. We'll find that out later, I guess. But I would hazard a guess that it wasn't too different in terms of the percentage of open looks the Celtics had. And, today they were hitting them. And that's really, probably the difference in this game.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it comes down to that, right? They hit the open threes. I did not think, we were saying this here watching the game, I did not think the Knicks defense was particularly bad for the most part. I think they were giving up maybe some above the break threes and some things that you normally didn't see, but I didn't think it was particularly bad. What do you think the Knicks need to do here to bounce back in Game 4? Because this is a blowout. I think all season long fans have wanted these games to be more competitive. You saw competitive games, at least in the fourth quarter of these first 2 ones. What do the Knicks need to do to bounce back here in Game 4?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to fix the 3-point disparity, right? I mean, we just talked about it with the Celtics. The Knicks, obviously, on their end, 5 of 25 from 3. That's just not something that can hold up over a series if the Knicks are going to be competitive. And the other thing that I would that just sticks out to me from this game, Mitchell Robinson was one of the Knicks' best players in terms of plus minus for the first 2 games of this series. Today, -3. Obviously, the hack and Mitch seemed to work pretty well for Boston, and seemed like maybe Mitch wasn't super confident, like maybe that was in his head a little bit. So that's something that that sort of on my list to watch for Game 4. And maybe if you're the Knicks, you try to tweak the rotations a little so that Mitchell Robinson isn't on the floor quite as much when you're in the bonus. Maybe you want him on the floor more, kind of at the start of quarters versus the end. But Joe Mazzulla seems pretty eager to foul him, even when the Knicks aren't in the bonus. So that's something they're going to have to just figure out.
Yeah, they're gonna have to figure it out. Joe Delera, who's here with us from the Action Network, he said the same thing. He said they should start maybe start Mitch, later in at the beginning of the quarter so they can get into the bonus, and that could benefit the Knicks other ways. We've had some talk here in the chat where people are saying, hey, maybe Tibbs should adjust the rotations more. You just kind of talked about that. Precious Achiuwa gave some good minutes in this one. The Knicks it's been a problem all season long, Ethan. They haven't got a lot out of their bench. Do you think Tibbs should maybe tweak the rotation a little bit more off the bench? Maybe some more looks at Precious, maybe some more time for McBride. Do you think the Knicks can do anything to get more out of their bench here in Game 4?
I think that could be worth a shot. But at the end of the day, like, this is who Tom Thibodeau has been for a really long time. So I don't know that it's necessarily like something that he would do, even if everybody thinks it's a good idea. He's always been a guy who plays short rotations, whether that's with the Knicks, Minnesota, Chicago, pretty much every stop of his career. And Game 4 of a playoff series is usually not the time where you see coaches go away from those sorts of tendencies. I agree with you that Precious Achiuwa was pretty good in those minutes today. Deuce McBride was solid in his as well, and played actually 20 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
But in terms of like whether or not we're actually going to see Tom Thibodeau make that kind of adjustment, I would probably call it unlikely.
Probably right about that, Brett.
Ethan, do you think that, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but it kind of feels like Game 4 might be the series? Because if the Knicks, obviously win this game, they'll pull ahead 3-1, and then from there you have 3 chances to close us out. But if Boston wins, you're now in a best of 3 situation where Boston has 2 home games, and while they're actually better on the road than at home, but they are probably not going to lose all their home games in the series, you would think, because of what we've seen from them for years. Do you have that same feeling that Game 4 will just tell us a lot as it relates to how this series is going to move going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you said, you don't want to like totally overstate it, right? And I guess the Knicks would have a puncher's chance in a best of 3, but coming back home 2-0 is a huge opportunity for the Knicks. And if you're coming back up to Boston failing to win either game, I mean, it's really hard to come back from that. The Knicks have played well on the road these playoffs. They played a lot better on the road than they have at home. But I mean, even so, right? The Celtics are, on paper, they're the favorite for this series. They're down 2-0, and if they kind of have momentum, if they've figured things out in terms of shooting the ball, that's going to be really, really tough for the Knicks to come back from, I would think.
Yeah, feels like it could be tough.
Yeah, and I think also, like, and we've talked about this up here, that the Knicks still haven't really played their A game, like their A game for an entire 4-quarter stint, or at least for like more than just a quarter, because they've had
I agree with that.
a great fourth in multiple games, so to speak. But do you think like that game is still coming, or is Boston's defense good enough to the point where it may not even come, and then you have to figure out, all right, there are spots where you can sort of take this if you're the Knicks, but they haven't put together a full 48 minutes yet, and it feels like they can, but Boston's also a difficult team to do that against.
Yeah, I mean, look, it has to come if the Knicks are going to win this series. As great as those first 2 games were, as fun as it was, you're not going to win a best of 7 series by coming back from 20 points 4 times. That's
right.
I don't know this as a fact, but I would feel pretty confident saying that that's never happened in NBA history. You're going to have to play, probably win 2 more games where you are playing well for 48 minutes or something pretty close to that. Otherwise they're they're probably going to blow a 2-0 lead in this series and, lose in 6 or 7 games. And that's just the fact of the matter. There's really not much way around that. Great for them that they came back in these 2 games, but that's probably not a sustainable way of doing this.
Yeah, it's not sustainable at all. Joe, anything for Ethan?
I was thinking, who do you think out of the guys on the Knicks do you need to see step up to really be able to make the difference? Because we've seen obviously good games from Jalen Brunson, some difficulty a little bit with the efficiency on a night-to-night basis. But I feel like Cat, we need a little bit more from him offensively. But it's been inconsistent almost for the rest of the team. So who do you think would be the most important player for the Knicks to step up and really be that third guy for them?
Yeah, I mean, really, you can go across the board there. Mikal Bridges, for everything he's done defensively, has been, I guess, pretty inconsistent offensively. Shot the ball okay today, but up until late in the game and in games 1 and 2 wasn't really making tons of impact. OG Anunoby was pretty invisible today. Just 6 field goal attempts. And I think Mitchell Robinson, they're going to have to figure out a counter to the Hakamich, and they're going to need him to make that kind of impact that we saw in games 1 and 2, where the rebounding when he was on the floor, and you saw it in the plus minus. The Knicks were really kind of dominating those minutes, and it seemed today like the Celtics kind of figured out a counter to that.
Yeah, you mentioned OG Anunoby, 6 shot attempts today, 1 of 6 from the field. Only 2 points, a minus 25.
The chat did too.
That's not good. We saw people in the chat saying that can't happen.
Yeah.
And I think another point you brought up, Ethan, that's a good one, is that we've all talked about this, how the Knicks haven't played their A game, and I guess there's a question to be, what does that A game look like against the Celtics team, right? Like, what do they have to do to actually play their A game in Game 4? Because I'm with Brian on this. I think Game 4 is, you got to win this game if you're going to win the series. They got to give themselves a shot where they have to win 1 out of the last 3. What does that A game look like to you if you see it going down for the Knicks on Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting, right? I don't think we know, because we haven't seen it for more than a quarter at a time. I guess based on those fourth quarters, you would say, it looks like the Knicks defending a lot better than they did today, and taking advantage on the other end. It looks like Jalen Brunson getting hot. It looks like Mikal Bridges being a much more impactful guy on both ends of the floor than he was today. It looks like Karl Anthony Towns being, probably a much better version of himself than we saw today. You can go down the line. Really, there's probably, I don't really think anybody on the Knicks played well today. So, in lieu of naming the whole roster, I think, I think it looks like a much more cohesive effort on both ends of the floor than we saw this afternoon, and really than we've seen, bar kind of those 2 fourth quarters for the entire series.
Yeah, you can't get down as much as they did today, and as you said, you keep getting down by 20 points. At some point, you're not going to be able to come back. But Knicks lose 115-93 to the Celtics. We will see what they can do, if they can bounce back in Game 4. Ethan Sears will be with us after Game 4, as he is intently watching this game. I'm hoping for your sake, Ethan, and ours, we see it A game in Game 4. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to see. We're not trying to see him go down 20 again. So if they can come out with their A game, and I think the one last thing I'll say before I let you go is that, you knew the crowd was going to be pretty pumped up today, and they were, but the Celtics were able to take the air out of the crowd. I think the Knicks need to come out really strong on Monday to keep that energy up from the crowd, to put more pressure on the Celtics. And I would think you would agree the crowd should be a big factor again on Monday night.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Knicks, they never led in this game. I think it was, what were they down 10-4 or something like that, and within the first few minutes, they really were pretty much never within 20 points in the second half, and really after probably the second quarter or so. There wasn't much for this crowd to get excited about, and it wouldn't have taken much, right?
Fair.
This is a crowd that paid a lot of money to
Yeah.
be at the Garden today.
Yep.
Everybody was excited after after 2 wins in Boston. This is really really as good of a chance as the Knicks have had to make it to a conference final or even an NBA finals in 25 years, I would
Yeah.
say. So it's not going to take much to get the crowd into it. And if the Knicks can get on a run to start Game 4, if they can come out hot, I think you're going to see it'll make a big difference in terms of that atmosphere and translate, probably to kind of the rest of the game.
Yeah, well, we will see. Game 4 Monday night. Knicks will have a chance to try to go up 3-1. Still in the driver's seat here. All is not lost, although I'm sure the fans are feeling, especially the ones who paid a lot of money to be at the Garden today, or we're outside in the watch plaza, because I don't think wherever you stay, if you're in that watch plaza watching, I mean, you can't be thrilled having been around all those people, and then you got to walk out of it. It's
tough day.
Yes, it's a tough day.
Yeah,
It's pretty tough. That is Ethan Sears, our guy, great reporter for the New York Post Sports. Ethan, it is a pleasure. We will see you Monday night, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Later. Once again, that's Ethan Sears. Everybody, check out his work here at the New York Post. Does a great job covering the Islanders for us. Knows his basketball really well here, too. I see a lot of people in the chat. Size9 said, what's the difference between this series and the Pistons series? They're playing the defending champions. It's not that the Knicks are playing, I think, terribly here. They have not put just together a complete game. But I do think I think there's a little bit of sometimes, I get it's Boston and New Yorkers, we don't like Boston, but you got to respect the opponent here. They are playing the defending champs. I don't think any of us sitting here thought the Celtics weren't going to fight back today. I don't think any of us sitting here thought the Celtics were not at some point going to hit some three-point shots.
Yeah.
The Celtics are a really damn good team, guys. They're the defending champions.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I thought that we'd get this game at some point. I kind of thought it would be Game 2, but I mean, I then remembered, hey, Celtics not that great at home sometimes. I think the big thing here though is like we were just saying, Game 4 it might be the series. It might be, because you go from giving yourself 3 chances to close us out to now you have to win twice.
Yeah.
Out of 3 against a team that's already lost both at home. That is going to have 2 home games going forward, and it's like I don't think Boston's going to go winless at home for an entire series. They've had weird series with Miami, for example, which I've referenced multiple times, but that's one of the most recent examples of them having a similar series. And you saw Miami would win in Boston would win in Miami. It'd be back and forth. Even a couple of years ago when Miami went up 3-0, the first 2 games were won in Boston. Yeah. And then Boston ended up fighting back and winning games in Miami. They won multiple games in Miami to force that Game 7, which was in Boston, and then we know what happened from there. So for this, it's Game 4 is going to be very important because you want to put Boston back in a similar hole where it's all right, now you have to win 3 straight times, which is doable, but you have to win 3 straight times against a team that seems to have your number in fourth quarters. And that's the thing that we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen the Knicks get off to a good start. Yeah. And I think that might be the key to this next game, where it's all right, if you put Boston in that situation early where they have to sort of fight back, what does that look like? It gives Boston more time, obviously. But with Boston, are they going to then be out of sync offensively? Are they going to start forcing threes if they're down 12 in the second quarter? We still haven't seen the Knicks feed off the crowd in that way and get off to a really good start. And I still think it's possible we do see that for Game 4.
Yeah, they're going to need it. They're going to need it. How are you feeling heading into game 4?
I mean, I think that it's just we expected one of these games from Boston at some point in time. This was the game they, I think, really had to win. I mean, you can't go down 0-3. So it's important to not lose home court after you flipped home court. And I think that's going to be the most important part about game 4. You got to win game 4. And then, like you said, it puts you in a situation where the way Boston plays basketball, it's a super high amount of variance. Leave that up to them then. So you have 3 games. Even if they go thermonuclear for 2 of them, there's going to be a game where the threes don't fall. And then that's the one that you can win. So I think that it's really New York put themselves in a good position. They put themselves in a position where if they lose, since they did lose this game, it's not the end of the world. You're still up 2-1, but you really got to lock in and try to win game 4.
Yeah. One more thing, Dex, real quick.
No,
because Joe mentioned this at probably the second or third quarter, where we're like, all right, Boston has X amount of threes. Last time they finished with 40.
Yeah.
Today they finished with exactly 40 again. Mm-hmm. The difference is they made 20 of them as opposed to making 10 of 40 or 15 of 60 as they did in game 1. So they did shoot better for 3. I don't think that tells the whole story, but with Boston, that's at least a healthy amount of it. They made 3.
Yeah, I mean, they made 50% of their threes. Like shooting 50, there's a big difference between 50% and 25%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Doubled it up.
Doubled it up.
Yeah.
And so when you combine that with the fact of what they shot at the line, I think they were 88, 89%. Then the Knicks shot as poorly as they did the line. A lot of that was Mitchell Robinson. And that does have an impact to the game. See, the Knicks weren't hurt by Mitchell Robinson because he only had 1 free throw attempt in game 2, right? In this game that happened. And that doesn't mean that, but we're still seeing, I want to be very clear about that. We're still seeing Mitchell Robinson's impact in this series in terms of on the glass, on the boards. But if he could hit free throws, it would hurt a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the reason they lost the game. It's never one thing. You know, people just like, you need to do this one thing or switch this one player. It's never that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I do not think, I want to be very clear, there's an adjustment. There's always adjustments game to game, but there isn't this one adjustment that is going to switch game 4 as much here. Like a lot of this is like, play a little bit better defense, hit some more of your shots, because if the Knicks hit more of their threes, the Celtics will be in a much better position. You're talking about getting off to a good start. All right, well, if you get off to a good start and you're up 8 or 10 in the first quarter, now the Celtics have to work harder to come back.
Right.
They haven't been in the position where they've had to work to really come back.
Right.
The Knicks know what that's like. The Celtics have no idea what that's like.
Celtics rarely have to do that.
And you have the momentum then. It's all on your side. So if you're able to control the pace, dictate the way the possessions go, you're also setting up Boston where they're not in transition. They have to run set offense if you're making these baskets. And that is a big swing. And I think that's part of what even helped New York in their comebacks, because Boston, they're really good at matchup hunting. They're really good at getting you when you're on your heels.
Yep.
If you make baskets, they're not going to have those same transition opportunities. So I think it's important that New York just really focuses on what their offense is.
Yeah, and listen, this is a Tibbs coach team led by Jalen Brunson. I think they're going to – you talked about looking at some tape, Joe. I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to look at what they can do better. But I think – and I'm sure we'll hear the quotes after. Last one, we need to play better.
Yeah.
We need to play better. We have not put a complete game together in the series. Think about what we're saying, everybody, watching, and you guys. The Knicks are up 2-1, and they have not played a even B-plus game in the series. We have not seen a complete game for them.
2 A-plus quarters.
Yes.
But other than that, some C's and whatever the case.
So if you think they can give you one, I'll take a B-plus game in game 4. That's huge.
Yeah.
Because like you said, now all the pressure's on the Celtics. They have to win the 3 in a row.
Because that's the other thing, right? If they play, like if the Knicks play their A game or B-plus game, as we're saying, it doesn't mean Boston won't. Like that's the other piece of it, like that's sort of the challenge of this team in general. And then after this, we'll get to some questions because, we have people in the chat obviously asking us things. But I think like for game 4, the start is going to be critical for the Knicks.
Yeah.
And because here's the thing too, like it's demoralizing to have to fight back every single time. Like that's the thing. Like if Boston has another 20-point lead at halftime, 20 plus or whatever it is, then it's like, all right, the Knicks have to fight back again. And like, that's taxing. There's only been so many times you can come from behind.
And then they're comfortable saying like, well, we had 20-point lead at halftime. Well, no, was it 20 or over 20 at halftime?
Yeah.
And we held it in their house.
Yeah.
Can we do this again?
Yeah.
If the Knicks, I think the start's so important for game 4. I thought the start was important today. It was even more important for game 4.
They missed so many bunnies to start the game too. It dramatically changed the game immediately, where Boston had a 15-point lead New York missed probably 4 or 5 shots that were either layups or right at the rim. And that swings, you're in maybe a couple possession game in the first quarter instead.
Yeah, just saw a call from Josh Hart.
They weren't generating the cleanest looks either.
They weren't. Josh Hart was just saying the Knicks didn't play with enough urgency. Now, that becomes very player speak after all these games and these losses.
And fans will take that and run with it. But I don't think urgency was the problem. It was it was mainly like execution more than anything else.
Right. And sometimes
couldn't make a shot.
Missing shots.
Right. To your point, I thought Knicks executed some good plays. They had some couple good looks and lane buddies that they missed. You wonder how much that took the wind out of their sails, for lack of a better term. And then they weren't confident as they could be on offense.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that. We'll get to some of the stuff here in the chat before we go. John says Boston made the Knicks work on defense. Knicks let Boston stand there and catch their breath with ISO. I mean, this was not that heavy of an ISO game. We saw some of that early from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but they didn't particularly kill them in isolation basketball.
No, I don't think I would have to see what the numbers come out to be, but I don't think it was super effective the way Brown and Tatum were playing ISO ball. I think it was more they were making threes early.
Yeah, Tatum shot 8 of 20, guys. 8 of 20. He was 5 of 9 from downtown. So I kept saying that the threes felt big because they were big.
Yeah. Because he hadn't been hitting them prior.
And it's like if you told me Tatum shooting 8 of 20, you will sign for that.
That was 40%. But the threes, that's like 54, 55%.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
And a lot of those threes, like we said it, he was open, he was walking into them. There was a catch and shoot three. Like a lot of those threes were threes in rhythm.
Yeah, they weren't fadeaways as the shot clock's winding down.
Right.
So
and the Celtics didn't have any rush threes. I saw that. I don't have the stats to do that. John said Dexter needs to get Brian Daboll to attend on Monday. I mean, maybe. I mean, you're the Giants fan here. Brian Daboll sitting in your seat, he's going to inspire confidence on the
I don't know. I mean, he might just have to, maybe lay somebody out is what he's saying.
I don't think he'd do it either.
Put Porty in then.
You know what? Maybe.
I don't think he'd do it.
John says start Mitch and Deuce over Cat and Bridges and let Cat and Bridges find their shots versus Boston backups.
You can't do that. You just can't do that.
Also, I think people make way too much about who starts.
Yeah,
it's about who can close games.
I say this all the time.
People worry way too much about who starts. Also, you're not benching anybody here at this point. If you're benching
not Cat.
You're benching Cat and you're benching Bridges. Why? Like Bridges was 6 of 12, I believe, in this game today, which is 12 points. He's been spotty offensively. He found his rhythm in the third quarter. It's not the reason that they lost. The Knicks have not been good offensively in the series, I also want to add. But, like, if the other team, which is a much better three-point shooting team than them, makes threes, if Boston shoots to their talent, they're going to win. I know nobody wants to hear that, but that's just – nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
But it's not that deep. It's really not that deep here.
But also, if you start – if we entertain it at all, if you start Deuce and Mitch, like, Boston will be like, what?
They're going to kill them.
Those are the two guys that they're hunting. Like, they're like, what? You mean to tell, like, all right, Mitch, so we're just going to put him in different pick and roll situations and trying to generate either looks at the rim because he's slow footed or 3-point shots at the corners because he's going to be there. And it's like, all right, we'll dare him to come out to the shooters because then we could just drive and, finish at the rim or drive and kick. And then with Deuce, he's the smallest guy there. So it's like, all right, Tatum posts him up. Jaylen Brown posts him up. Horford posts him up. Like, they'll figure out how to do the cross-match stuff, which Boston does better than most teams.
They're great at that. They're great at that. So it's also, I know Cat has his liabilities, John. We appreciate the comment, but you're taking off Mikal Bridges, who's been one of your best defenders throughout this playoffs.
Yeah.
I know he's been a little slow offensively at times. You're going to ask him to play less minutes now just because you think he will cook against bench units. He's not going to get that much minutes against the bench. Nobody's playing their bench that many minutes.
Right, it's the playoffs. Like, if teams are going 7-8 deep, maybe 9, maybe.
And even then, it's like a fake 8 and 9.
It's a fake 8 and 9. Those guys are playing 4 or 5 minutes, maybe.
If you look at and this today, counting garbage time, if you look at the minutes distribution, so for Boston, they went 8 deep. Other guys played 2 minutes. That don't count. But Porzingis had 19 minutes. Pritchard had 34, who was great today. And Luke Kornet had 10. And that's like the end of your rotation. If you look at the Knicks, we saw Precious Achua, we talked about
Yeah.
that. He played 6 minutes. That's not rotation minutes. So Precious Achua wasn't really like in the rotation. It was in the first half rotation. Then
That was because of foul trouble.
That's because of foul trouble. I got to give
It was only
Tibbs
'cause of foul
credit
trouble.
for going
So-
to him when it was foul trouble.
Yeah.
The rotation for the Knicks was 7 deep because Mitch had 20 minutes and Deuce McBride had 20 minutes. So that's really it. And that's what we're going to see from the rotations.
So
for
to that point, do you want to then put, let's say you flip those, you want Cat playing 20 minutes?
I don't think
that's crazy.
he wouldn't do it that way, but I like.
Yeah.
His point though, to John's, if
There's an
elaborate
adjustment
more.
to be made, but it's not going to be that dramatic.
Yeah.
No, it's a start with the defensive roster to keep the game close. When they hack Mitch, they will be in the bonus. Now, I mean, there's a lot of assumptions there that even if you do start with that defensive roster to the game be close, that would mean the Celtics weren't hitting threes.
Yeah.
And it's not like the Celtics can't hit threes on that. And then you bring up the good point. They'd have that huge size advantage with McBride in the game.
Deuce, they're not starting.
Yeah.
Like Mitch is the only one where I'm like, okay,
That could fit.
but that's like Boston is now up 3-2.
You need to do something
Right. That's what that is. Like I don't think.
And you would
Tibbs-
start Mitch with Cat,
with Cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
With Cat.
and you put him hard on the
Like
bench.
that's the thing. Tibbs is not
Probably.
starting. He's not starting him for Cat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless Cat is playing with like a severed hand, but like he's not. That's not happening.
No.
I don't see it.
Now Mitch starting the second, third, and fourth quarters is probably a different discussion.
I think like you get the rotation, you get him in the rotation a little bit earlier to come into these quarters, and
that makes sense. To
I
me.
think that makes more sense because also it's a psyche thing. I mean, if you tell the team, hey, we're going to mix up the rotations a little bit, we're going to bring in the bench guys a couple minutes earlier because we want them in this particular matchup. That's a lot easier for these guys to swallow than saying, hey, Bridges, Cat, you're gonna come off the bench. Like, these guys are like Cat is a max player. Mikal Bridges is up for a contract extension that's going to be probably in this at least the 9-figure mark. I would
OG
imagine.
range, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be
like
a big contract.
Yeah.
You can't tell those guys you're coming off the bench.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget the people stuff in this, right? Like I said, you're telling guys who are very prideful, who have worked, you're telling Mikal Bridges, who just had 2 game-saving defensive plays, nah, man, go sit on the bench. Like, I understand the thought of what John is saying and wants it. I think the spirit of what he's saying is he wants defense out first.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's going to happen like that. And I don't think that's really the issue. I think the Celtics just didn't take as many rush threes today. They took more things in rhythm, particularly Jason Tatum. And there's a difference in the game. The Knicks have not been a good team all year defending the three.
No.
We know this. It's one of their limitations. And some of it is because their 2 best offensive players are also their worst defensive players.
Yeah.
Now, I think they've punched above their weight defensively here in this series. I think there are things the Knicks could build on. But if the Knicks want to win the series, I do think Game 4.
They got to make their shots.
You got to hit. That's the thing. That's how you hit Boston. That's how you beat Boston. Is you have to, among other things, you have to hit shots. You have to defend well. But if you don't hit shots, like they're usually, not every time as we've seen in the series so far, like they're going to hit shots.
Yeah, because Boston too, when the game's close, they fall into that propensity to just dribble the air out of the ball.
Exactly.
And if you can force that issue, the edge is going to go to New York because you have Jalen Brunson.
Yeah. Like you go look at any of Boston's dumb losses in the playoffs, like really the first 2 games of the series, any of the Miami games, the game that they blew against Orlando and they almost blew another one.
Yeah.
And Orlando, like to their credit, Orlando defends Boston better than anyone in the NBA.
Because they can take away the 3.
Because they take away the threes. Anybody. They were 6-3 against Boston straight up heading into that series. I don't think people really looked into that much. And honestly, if Jalen Suggs were healthy, they pushed them to 6 games, I think, maybe even 7.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing. The Knicks don't have the same personnel for that. You would think because of OG and Mikal Bridges, but like they're not as physical, or at least Mikal isn't at times.
Yeah.
They're not as physical in the way, like they'll beat you to the spot, but like Orlando will just straight up push you around.
Yeah.
And which was bothering Boston. They were complaining about the physicality. And this is one of the things I said leading into this series. It's like, can the Knicks actually be physical with them?
I think they need to tap into a little bit of what they got out of the Pistons series, though, because that was a super physical series. And I think there was some commentary from even some of the guys on the team saying, I think it might have been Campaign was saying, like, thank God for the Pistons.
No, he did. Campaign's the one who said that.
Of course.
Yeah, which is funny. But he was literally like,
Campaign,
they put us in a situation where we had to be physical. It was a war.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead. Keep going.
I was just saying, you tap into that. Maybe you can disrupt a little bit of what Boston's doing.
And sometimes that's what the playoffs is, like teams putting you into positions where you have to adjust for it. This is why you can't get too high or too low after every game.
Yeah.
The Knicks can make adjustments here. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be drastic, but some of it is going to be like, okay, we now have to maybe do something differently against the three. We have to be more aggressive in this way. We're going to take this away. We can't leave those above the break threes.
Yeah.
Make it as comfortable as we want to make it as uncomfortable for them as possible. And that's the thing. I feel like Game 4 is setting up for big time to be a big Jalen Brunson game.
Yeah.
I think Jalen
Maybe.
Brunson has to come out and set the tone as the star that he is and say,
Yeah.
get on my back, guys. We're not losing
8
this
points
game.
in the first 2 minutes, something like that.
Something like that.
You know, the thing, and
Yeah.
the reason why they can't quite do what Orlando does is because also, like, if Orlando is running you off the 3-point line, so to speak, and they're driving you into the lane and being forcing you to take like tough twos or making you take tougher shots at the rim, you're going up against like Wendell Carter, Goga Batazzi, Jonathan Isaac at times, or whoever's
even
there.
Paolo, yeah,
even Paolo actually, and Franz Wagner is a good defender too, who is like a good help defender as well. But if you're looking at like the Knicks, it's like you're driving them into Karl Anthony Towns, and that's what Boston wants. That's why you can't quite do the same things. You can be physical with Boston. I think there's room for that. There's room for physicality in any playoff series. But it's about whether or not you have the personnel to do it. But ultimately, you just have to make shots. Like, unfortunately, like you just got to play better. That's what a lot of this comes down to. It's like scheming will only do but so much against Boston if they're going to hit shots.
Yep.
So if they hit shots, you got to hit shots. Like, you just have to be better. You have to play better. I know that's not like, top tier elite analysis, but this is basketball. This is basketball at the end of the day. Like, it is legitimately a make or miss league, and there's no team in the NBA that's more make or miss than the Celtics.
Yep.
So you have to make enough shots to keep up with them.
Sometimes you just got to give credit where credit's due. Look, it was a disappointing loss today for the Knicks. I don't think it's devastating. Joe said it. I don't think it's the end of the world. I happen to agree. They fall to the Celtics 115-93. There's still Game 4 on Monday. I think a lot of you Knicks fans out there would have signed to be up 2-1 in this position with a chance to go up 3-1. You got 2 cracks at it at home.
Yeah.
The crowd's still going to be lit on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
The energy will be there. We'll be back here on Monday to talk about it, watch along with you. Joe, we appreciate you coming through, man.
Hey,
This was a lot of fun. It was a pleasure. I love reading your work, your analysis, and it was a lot of fun. We're gonna have to do this with you again.
No, this is a blast. Thanks for having me.
Don't feel bad because you're 0-1 in the seat. You know what I mean? There's other people who've been 0-1 in the seat. Doesn't mean you can't come back. It's not your fault.
As long as I don't go down like with a 20-point deficit or something like that.
There you go.
Pull myself out of that.
You're the guy who'll show back up, though. We trust that for sure. That's Joe Delera. Check him out on the Action Network. Does a great job with the NBA, covering all of it, giving you the best bets that there is.
Yes.
Hopefully, our bets, at least for me,
Cash That Podcast.
Do a little better.
Yeah.
Cash That
Also,
Podcast. Yes.
which I've been on.
Also on YouTube.
Yes.
On YouTube. Check that out. One of the best there. If you still want to throw some money on the Knicks to win the series,
you'll get value now.
It's gonna be juicy.
After this,
Yeah.
you'll
value.
get a good.
This might be a good
the
time to buy.
Celtics were favored narrowly.
Today.
Favored before this game. Okay, they
to
were
still
like,
win the series.
to still win
Yeah.
the series.
Yeah.
So if you really want to put your money where your mouth is, and you think the Knicks are going to win the series, go bet it right now because you'll get it at a good number.
There you go. You can do that. That should be fun. Well, as I said, we'll be back on Monday. Our guest should be Candace Pedraza for that one for Game 4
Yeah, confirmed.
evening tip. So that'll be good. We'll see everybody then. For Joe Delera and Brian Fonseca, I'm Dexter Henry. We'll catch you on Monday for Game 4 live Knicks watch party. New York got game style. Peace.